Hi, it's Taylor from Doomed to Fail. Welcome to our last spring break episode. This one is on the Hindenburg. This is a good one to end with because it's not going to make you want to travel for a smidge. Not that you're going to ever travel on a Zeppelin. Like, I'm sorry, you're not. But let's learn about the Hindenburg. So, you probably know that it crashed and it was a Zeppelin, which is like a blimp. Same thing, they're a little bit different. It was huge. And the thing that I didn't know until this episode, I'm going to spoil this part for you, is that it was obviously German, Hindenburg, obviously, but it had Nazi flags on it, and it flew over New York City. So the Hindenburg, before it crashed in New Jersey, flew over New York City with swastikas on it. I just think that's absolutely wild. I didn't know that until I did the research for this one. So hope you had a great spring break. Hope you enjoy this episode, and we will be back next week with new content. Thanks.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I was thinking, am I getting too close to history stuff?
It's fine.
Okay. If I overstep, you'll tell me, right?
I'll let you know.
Okay. We have boundaries.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thank you. I'm gonna maybe watch some Keystone Cops later. Watch
It looked
bumble around.
it looked funny. I mean, Buster Keaton was in it.
Yeah, he's funny.
And then one of Fatty's nephews was in it too. And so
Oh,
it's
cute.
just, I don't know, it's just like a cool little time capsule of like the 1920s.
Yeah, totally. I love it. Well, I'm actually going further in the future than 1920 than
Wow.
is today. I know.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was thinking about you being in Ireland and flying there, and you had mentioned that you wanted to go to Belfast to see where the Titanic launched from, and then I was thinking like, what else went from Europe to America? And like we've been trying to really crack this code of getting across the pond for centuries. So another famous thing that went from Europe to the US was an airship called the Hindenburg.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I'm going to tell you about the tragedy of the airship Hindenburg. The Hindenburg was made by the Zeppelin Company, also known as Luftschiffe Zeppelin. It was founded in 1908 by Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin. So like the guy's name is Zeppelin, which is fun. He was a German inventor, an aviation pioneer, and he was born on July 8th, 1838 in Constance, Germany. So it starts off in like the early 1900s, and then the Hindenburg, you'll find out, crashed in 1937. So that's kind of where the story ends. Count von Zeppelin had a distinguished military career. He was in the Prussian army. During his military service, he gained experience in engineering and aeronautics. So this is like the very beginning of like maybe we can do stuff in the sky. He came to the US to observe during the American Civil War, because what happened here is that people used balloons, like hot air balloons, for reconnaissance for like the first time. So like the first time that you could like of another army's stuff. That was never a thing in the history of the world. And I definitely remember being a kid and like reading a book about women who would like take their hoop skirts, like their big dresses, and make them into hot air balloons so that they could do that like reconnaissance. I don't know if that's
Really?
true or not, but I read it was like a book I read a little. I think that's probably true because during wartime, you like get rid of all your stuff to like help the cause. So,
Yeah.
but we use hot air balloons for that. And Zeppelin, he came here and observed them. He worked with the French and other countries to perfect his ideas, and he eventually invented the airship. So just for the record, Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin passed away in 1917, which is about like 9 years after he started his company. The first successful flight of a Zeppelin, the LZ-1, took place on July 2nd, 1900. Eventually, there were more flights. Germany used the Zeppelin as an aerial bomber during World War I. They used it to bomb France, the UK, and Belgium. It's a very, very German invention.
Wait, so
So it's like,
did he invent the concept of an airship?
yes.
Oh, that's pretty like revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely like there were like kind of planes a little bit during this time. That was when, like that was starting, but it was like, how can we get in the air faster? You know, and that's why he was thinking like a ship. And the only really concept you had for like long distance travel also was a ship,
Chip. Yeah.
you know, because it takes like 10 days to cross the Atlantic on a ship, like a steamer, you know. So you have that idea that it's gonna take a long time and it has to be huge.
Right.
Did you ever watch Fringe, that show?
If I did, I don't remember it.
Well, two things. One, did you ever, oh my God, this is a thing and a thing. Did you ever watch Hot Tub Time Machine?
Oh yeah.
Did you see Hot Tub Time Machine 2?
No.
Okay, it's better than the first one. It's so good. But one of the son will go, this is just like Fringe. And then everybody else will go, you're a fucking nerd and nobody likes you. And nobody likes you. It's so funny. So whenever I think of Fringe, I think of that. And then also, so Fringe is very complicated, but there's like an alternate universe, and the only difference is that 9/11 didn't happen and there are Zeppelins. It's hilarious because you
That's
like know
cool.
you're in that universe because you see the Twin Towers and also there are Zeppelins.
Do you
But I
remember
also know,
in Do you remember in Hot Tub Time Machine when that guy went back and he created Lugal?
yes, so good. I
So
literally was
good.
listening to a Motley Crue song in the car, and I only know it. I know it best from being a Motley Lue song from Hot Tub Time Machine.
Oh man, I need to rewatch that now.
It's the second one's so good. You have to watch it. You've also probably heard that the Empire State Building was planned to be like a place where you could drop people off in Zeppelins, but it
Did
ended up being too windy up there.
makes sense.
Yeah. So the basic framework of a Zeppelin is an oblong shape. You know what it looks like. It has an aluminum frame because aluminum is very light. It's covered in fabric. The fabric is painted over with a few layers of like special paint and chemicals to make it sturdy. The Zeppelin itself is full of hydrogen. Hydrogen is lighter than air, so it floats, but it's obviously very flammable. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. When a better gas to use than hydrogen would be helium, but helium is a naturally occurring gas, and we're currently in a helium shortage. During the early 1900s, when the Germans were like, "Oh, we should try helium," the only people that really had an abundance of helium was the United States, and we would not give it to them.
Okay. So they
So
had no
they
choice
had to
but to
use
use hydrogen.
yeah. Right now, scientists estimate that at the current rate of global consumption, we have enough helium for like another 100 to 200 years, and then it'll be over.
No more
So
balloons.
in 300 years, yeah, no balloons at your birthday parties. Future kids. Ha.
Yeah.
Sucks
Take
to be
that.
you.
Oh
Yeah,
my God. And that along with how we feel about clowns is gonna completely destroy the clown community.
it's going to be over.
I
Absolutely.
mean,
There's no helium. We wouldn't give it to them because it's the early 1900s and we don't trust them. And so it's filled with hydrogen. There's essentially like 16 giant balloons in the middle of the Zeppelin filled with hydrogen. There's fins that do the directions on like the sides and the back to help it go up and down. There's like an engine and some like propellers. There's a control room. It has wheels like a ship wheel to keep it steady and to keep it going up and down. So the captain kind of works in there. In some cases, like in the Hindenburg, there's passenger cars, there's a restaurant, like also in Indiana Jones. Do you remember that part of Indiana Jones when they're getting
no.
on the airship and then he's like, no ticket because he punches that guy and goes out the window?
I
You have a lot
believe
of
that
movies to watch
I've
today.
every time I leave this podcast, I'm like, man, that's like 7 more hours of media consumption for me.
So, whatever. It's pre-plane travel, but planes are close. The problem right now is they don't know how to pressurize an airplane, so it has to fly low, and then it takes a long time to go, and it's very dependent on the weather. Because so now, you fly above the weather, but you couldn't do that then. The Zeppelin also was not pressurized, so it was also pretty dependent on the weather. And then there was also some water, like a whole bunch, many tanks of water in it that they could ballast out, so like dump out the water so that it would go up and down. So
Holy
all
shit,
kinds of different ways to make it move.
there's Nazi flags on the side of this thing.
I'm going to get to that. No, that's the craziest part, I think, of the
Okay,
story.
yeah, sorry.
Okay. So it sounds scary and kind of fun. The current Zeppelin that you might think of would be the Goodyear blimp. And Goodyear blimps were actually just balloons, like a big hot air balloon, until 2014, when they started getting remade as helium Zeppelins. Goodyear actually works with Germany's ZLT Zeppelin Luftschink, which is the same company that Zeppelin started. So it the company is like back and making Zeppelins, and that's what Goodyear worked with to make these new Goodyear like blimp Zeppelins. After World War One, the Treaty of Versailles told Germany they couldn't make any more Zeppelins for their military, and they made them destroy all of them.
Wow.
So the company continued and did passenger Zeppelins. And then after in World War II, they built the V-2 rocket for the Nazis. And the company dissolved right before World War II ended. But they had some money kind of set aside and it was re like created in the 1990s. So yeah, it's a very Nazi thing, like you were saying, which is not what I remembered.
Are you going to go into more detail about what the passenger experience was on the Hindenburg?
Yeah,
Okay, then I will
yeah.
suspend questions.
Going back to the beginning, even though it sounds scary and like because you're like in this big, huge thing, Zeppelins are actually a pretty safe way to travel. For the first 30 years or so, there are a few accidents, but Germans are very confident that this is it. This is the way to travel. One notable Zeppelin was the Graf Zeppelin in 1929. It flew around the world. On August 7th, 1929, it left from Friedrichshafen, Germany, and it took 21 days to travel all around the world. It stopped in the Soviet Union, Japan, the United States. People were super excited because they had done this traveling fast as anybody had ever traveled around the world. There were a couple accidents, some in the 1900s where people crashed and nobody died. There was one in 1910, the LZ-7, known as the Deutschland, caught fire and crashed during a test flight. Two people died. In 1913, the LZ-20, known as the Zeppelin L2, crashed and all 28 crew members on board died. And then in 1933, the USS Akron, which was not a Zeppelin, but an airship because it was from the United States, encountered severe weather and they crashed and 73 people died in that one. So there are accidents, but also like what transportation isn't perfect. There's like one story where a Zeppelin disappears over the ocean, like it never made it, but like that happened the other day with that Malaysia airline flight. So
Yeah, I was going to say also, like, I mean, planes couldn't have been super reliable, right?
yeah, totally.
So,
I don't think it's like crazy. It's not crazy dangerous. So I'll talk about the Hindenburg itself and what was happening inside of it. It was named after the German president, Paul von Hindenburg. Hindenburg is the guy who appointed Hitler as chancellor.
bad
So,
move. Bad
yeah,
move.
bad move. It is one of the largest airships ever constructed. It was completed in 1936. It was 803 feet in length, so like 5 passenger planes, like really big. The inside the ship itself, there was like the gondola, which is the part that like you see that hangs off the bottom. That's where like the captain was and the crew where they could like guide the ship. The passenger quarters were kind of inside the balloon part on the bottom, like layered on the bottom, and they had windows that were like curved going out. So if you were like in an egg sitting on the bottom of the egg, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like flat. There
Yeah.
were two decks, A deck and B deck. The decks had sleeping quarters that were really small, like a small little room with bunk beds. And then it had like there's a bathroom, and then there were like some lounges, places where you could, you know, hang out. So also for the rest of the ship, because that's only a tiny part of it where the passengers were. For the rest of it, like it's this big space with these big balloons of gas, and there was a corridor that went through the balloons, and in the middle of that, there were some rooms for storage and for the crew. So it must have been like really dark and loud and scary inside of
I was
that
going to
corridor.
say, it sounds scary as shit.
Yeah,
Thing is
because the
huge.
only windows are on the side. Yeah, so you could like walk like 800 feet in this like dark tunnel surrounded by flammable gas.
Yeah, that
Way
sounds
above the
terrifying.
ocean. Yeah. There's also a reading and writing room to send telegraphs, so you could like read and send messages to people in that room. And there was also a smoking room, which people think is funny and like is definitely funny, but people couldn't handle being on a 3-day trip and not smoking. Like
Yeah.
that was the problem with the Graf Zeppelin. Like it was like people were like, I'm not gonna go on this trip for a week and not smoke a cigarette. So they made a room that was pressurized and you had to go in and you would smoke in there. There was one electric lighter allowed on the entire thing. You weren't allowed to bring in matches or lighters or anything. Like you were like searched before you got on and you could smoke in that room. The smoking room is not the problem. It's not the thing that exploded. It just like happened to be a room where you could smoke on this like bomb, essentially.
Yeah. I
There
like how
was
you
a
phrase that. Smoke inside this bomb. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, a safe way to smoke inside a bomb. There was a bar that had paintings of flamenco dancers on the side. There was a lounge with a piano. The piano was specially made out of aluminum to be lighter than a regular grand piano, because otherwise it would be too heavy to be on the ship. There is a website that I'll share called on airships.net. There's a lot of pictures of the inside of it. So it's like a nice, like luxurious way to travel. So it's a really nice lounge. The windows are kind of on the side, like looking down, so you could look down. The rooms are small, but it's a short trip. It's like 2.5 days. So people would, be able to go on it and then just like kind of hang out and then be across the pond. Um,
It seems like most of anything pasture related would have to be inside of the actual balloon.
yes. So
The
that it
gondola
is
is
inside.
tiny.
Yeah, it's inside the balloon. If you look at the picture of the Hindenburg, you see little tiny windows at the bottom of the balloon. Those are the windows from the passenger
Yeah,
decks. Yeah. So they were like in the bottom of the balloon. They weren't in the gondola, which I thought they were,
right.
but they weren't. Yeah. A ticket on the Hindenburg one way was approximately $450, which is $9,400 today.
Wow.
So it was like a luxury thing. It can cross the ocean in 2 days. Ships take like a week. Before 1937, the Hindenburg made 17 round trips to and from Germany, 10 to the US and 7 to Brazil. Super successful, no problems. Now it is May 3rd, 1937, and the Hindenburg is about to come to the US again. 1937 is a crazy time to be in Germany. Hitler was appointed chancellor in 1933. The Nazis are getting worse and worse and worse. It's very totalitarian. It's a year before Kristallnacht when they started to be like very publicly violent towards Jews, but they've been doing terrible things for years now. There's propaganda, there's the Gestapo, there's the SS. It's a year before the official outbreak of World War II, but Germany is starting to invade other countries. So it's like it's starting gearing up for war. Someone actually wanted to rename the Hindenburg the Hitler, which is
Ugh.
like unbelievable. But also like Hindenburg isn't a good guy, but it just doesn't have the same like tone
Yeah,
as naming it the Hitler.
the visceral reaction isn't quite there.
Yeah, and not the same. So this is the thing that I think is crazy. There's like very scary propaganda posters that show like the Hindenburg and Zeppelins with the swastika, with like the eagle, with like the scary German
Yeah,
things. Do you remember when we went to that German propaganda
yeah,
exhibit at the library?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it was at the LA Public Library like several years ago, but we went and it showed a bunch of the propaganda, and then some of the takeaways were like, imagine what they could have done with the internet. Like it could be exponentially more scary now. And then also like this happened because good people were like, it's no big deal. And then it got out of control and then it was too late, you know?
yeah.
So it was like I thought that was a very good message. Like you have to stand up right now before bad things
So
happen.
there is something unusually daunting and scary about this thing with Nazi symbology all over it because it's just a giant. I mean, it looks like a missile. Like it looks
It
like a
looks like a
giant
missile.
bomb.
Like a
Yeah,
big silver thing. Yeah, totally. And, like swastikas are fucking scary. Like
yeah,
same with like hearing the word Hitler, like you're afraid. Like it's a scary symbol to see. So the Hindenburg leaves Germany on May 3rd, 1937. 97 people were on board. They approached the US on May 6th, so 3 days later. They're heading for Lakehurst, New Jersey, and that's where the landing strip is and where they can land. There's also a lot of reporters there. The Zeppelin company really wanted reporters to be there whenever they landed. This was the first flight of the season, so they wanted everybody to, record it and be like, Zeppelins, they're awesome, you know. So the weather starts to get bad. It starts to get rainy. It starts to get kind of windy. And so they need to delay their landing. So they swing by New York City. And this is the part that's fucking insane because they flew an airship with swastikas on it over New York City. Like that blows my mind.
yeah. But at that
There's
time,
video of it.
that was just a country's flag, right? It didn't
No,
have
I
that
know.
meaning.
Oh,
Yeah,
but yeah, but you like kind of knew, like I feel like people did not know. It wasn't like zero. Like you knew that
yeah,
like and also people were still probably mad at Germany since we just did this.
right, right.
you know, the Empire State Building was built in 1931, so people were could have been on top of the Empire State Building 100 or so stories up, like watching this. And I have video of it that I'll share. When I was living in New York City, I worked at a hedge fund, and I was on the 38th floor of a building overlooking Central Park. It was beautiful and an awesome view. I saw two crazy things from being up there. I saw the space shuttle being brought to DC on top of an airplane. I don't
Yep,
remember what happened. It was like
yep.
hugging it. It was super
I saw
cute.
that too, actually.
Yeah. So I watched that out the window, and I also saw the Miracle on the Hudson plane in the Hudson.
You saw that
Um,
landing?
I didn't see it crash, but I saw it floating, and I knew it was happening because my friend Juliana from work, she had left work early to go home to New Jersey, and she was on the ferry that pulled people out of the water.
Wow,
So she was like literally like giving people her coat and pulling them out of the water, but I saw it floating from the building that I was in. So you see crazy things
what an
flying
experience.
over New York City. But I had never heard that it had swastikas on it, that Hindenburg had swastikas. So that kind of blew my mind.
Please do.
Um,
If you do Hindenburg, New York City, would you see it?
yeah, there's a 5 minute newsreel from Britain. I'll send you the link and you can see it and it shows it like a video.
Wow. Yeah, that is kind
Yeah.
of crazy.
So the weather's getting
It
bad.
looks like an act of aggression. It doesn't look like.
That's what I'm saying. It's scary. Like
Yeah.
it's scary. And they've used Zeppelins to bomb, the UK during World War One. Like they've used them for that thing.
Yeah.
So now it's heading back towards New Jersey. It was about a 12-hour delay that they had because of weather. So kind of like floating around trying to figure out when they can land. The captain, Max Pruss, is attempting to maneuver the airship for landing. It took about 3 hours to get from New York to New Jersey. So technically they could have waited more, but because like they don't really like they could kind of float up there for indefinite amount of time, but they wanted to land and get going. There are passengers waiting to return to Germany. So they were going to flip it around and go right back to Germany. So they started to, as they start to kind of go into New Jersey, the back of the Hindenburg is a little low, like lower than you'd expect it to be. So they start dropping some of the water ballast to kind of get it to go up. You don't know exactly what was happening because there isn't like a black box of recording, so you don't know exactly what they were thinking. They could have potentially like had sent a guy back to like check on it, what was going on inside of it. They dropped their anchor lines. So they dropped their anchor lines and those hit the ground. And approximately 4 minutes later, flames erupted. And that's what you see in the newsreels is it burning. So have you heard Herbert Morrison's live account
Oh
of
yeah.
the humanity? Okay, I'm gonna read
Oh
it in
yeah.
a second. But also, do you remember in like elementary school learning about War of the Worlds
Oh
in,
yeah,
in
yeah.
the
The
Orson Welles?
Orson Welles. Yep. Yep.
And they like make it seem they did when I was like in third grade. Like people were dumb for believing that War of the Worlds was happening and that it was like their fault. But if you ever really listen to it, it's fucking scary. It sounds like a newsreel. Like you wouldn't know that it was someone acting. The only thing that's really kind of weird is like the time doesn't make sense, but I don't know how you would know it wasn't real. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that form of entertainment didn't exist. So like, why
yeah,
would you? Yeah. Why would you ever assume wasn't real?
yeah. So okay, I'm gonna do my best Herbert Morrison impression.
Let's hear it.
You ready? Okay. So he's with Charlie, his engineer. Charlie is his like engineer, and Herbert Morrison is a reporter from Chicago. So he says, "It's starting to rain again. The rain sucked up a bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it, just enough to keep it from. It's burst into flames. It's burst into flames, and it's falling. It's crashing. Watch it, folks. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Get this, Charlie. Get this, Charlie. It's burning. It's crashing. It's crashing. Terrible. Oh my. Get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames, and it's falling, and the mooring mast, and the folks between. Oh, this is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's flames crashing. Oh, 400 or 500 feet in the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. It's smoke and it's flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. Oh, the humanity. All the passengers screaming around here. I told you, I can't even talk to people. Their friends are on there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying there, a mass of smoking wreckage, and everyone can hardly breathe and talk. And the screaming lady, I am sorry, honest, I can't hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside where I cannot see it. Charlie, this is terrible. I can't. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost my voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed. And that was
Wow.
those 30 seconds
Wow. That
of
feels
destruction.
that really like puts you there in the moment. Like it like
Yeah.
I mean the way you read it really well because like I could feel the panic in the way you read it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, like I mean, I didn't even think about like people are waiting for their friends with like the
Yeah.
welcome home signs, and they're watching it explode, like right
It's
in front of
crazy.
them. The flame started in the tail, rapidly spreads through the ship. The hydrogen ignited, fireball, 30 seconds, and it's gone. People were jumping out of the cabins, people on the ground running and screaming. 36 people died, 13 passengers and 22 crew members, and one worker on the ground. So a fair amount of people, more than half people did survive.
Yeah, because wasn't it like close to the ground already? So it's not like And I would imagine as the flames are running through the thing, the gas is like gradually escaping, not like it's just like gone and then you're dropped to the ground. Like I would imagine they hit the ground harder than you'd want it to, but not like insanely hard. Like
Well, it didn't because it didn't like you're right. It didn't like crash into the ground like a plane crashed into the ground. It kind of like floated to the ground, but also like it's a fireball on top of it. You know, it's like all fire, and then like a little bit where passengers are, and that fire is on top of them. So yeah, they were pretty close to the ground. They're about 200 feet above the ground. People did start to jump out of it. Some crew members even like threw ropes out and like mattresses to help people get out. There's an emergency hatch. They slid down. So some people were like on their way running out of it, and then it crashed on top of them, and they were burned. In the British Pathé News thing that I'll send you and share, they show that happening, and it's awful. Like people are running out of it, and then it just crashes on top of them.
jeez.
And it's really awful. So the mystery is why did this happen? Like no one really knows 100% what happened. And I'll share that footage with you, but all the footage is from one spot because that's where the reporters were. They were in like the reporter area, so they all have it from like one angle, but there are a lot of videos of it. They show people, jumping and running and being smashed. So there had to be a spark somewhere, obviously, to like start the fire. Some of the theories are like maybe it was sabotage because people don't like Nazis. That could be a part of it. Maybe something exploded in the back. Maybe there was a leak. So the back of the ship was like getting lower. So maybe the hydrogen was leaking. Like you didn't really know. And then I watched this documentary on PBS that's like relatively new about a new theory. A man named Howard Schenck, his uncle was there and had a video camera. Like it was like a wind up video camera, but he was in a different spot. So we got a different angle from the Hindenburg that no one had seen before. And from that, they did some, they flew to Germany with like some experts and they did some experiments. And what they discovered, and I think this is pretty convincing, is because it was raining, the ropes were wet and the top of the Zeppelin was wet as well. And when they dropped the ropes and the ropes hit the ground, it like
Oh,
connected it. And then the whole thing became electrical. And then once that happens, the water creates a spark. So it's like why you don't have like a toaster in the oven, in the
right.
bath. You know what I mean? And so when they did it, when they did their experiment, they electrified the rope and then the top of the Zeppelin, they got it wet, and it took 4 minutes to catch on fire, which is exactly what happened on
Oh
the
wow.
Hindenburg. So I'm pretty convinced by that. I thought it was really interesting. So because they were like rushing to go down in the rain and just like the way it connected happened to like cause a spark. So after, but they don't know, and we'll never really know for sure because all the evidence is destroyed. It's just like destroyed. There's nothing. There's just like burned aluminum girders or whatever. So after this, there were no more transatlantic Zeppelin flights. It was over. People still had, like a ticket to go back that day, and they didn't, obviously. Planes started to get more sophisticated, and then also like we're folding into World War II, so there's other things to think about. The last Zeppelin airship constructed by the company was the LZ-130 Graf Zeppelin II. It flew in 1938, but it didn't go across the ocean again. It was used for like sightseeing and Nazi propaganda during World War II.
Right.
I kind of think that I would go on one because it seems like so weird. Like I feel like we don't even talk about like the 2 days over the ocean on this. That's crazy. It sounds super scary, but like fun, right?
It it definitely sounds scary.
Yeah. So I mean, also at that hedge fund that I worked at in New York, they would like companies who wanted you to like invest in them would like give you stuff. And two of the guys I worked with got to go on the Goodyear blimp, and they said it was really, really loud. That was like their biggest takeaway because like you're like low and the windows can be like opened. So like
Yeah.
it's like a loud thing. So now you can kind of do that. And I think you can also do like sightseeing blimps like around, obviously. But I also feel like I would not go on a hot air balloon. So I don't know.
I read something that when I'm looking this up, there are only 25 blimps in the world right now.
Huh.
Yeah, they're super rare apparently. Only
Blimp or
half them
Zeppelin?
are
Because
in
blimp,
use. Oh, I guess they're different, right?
yeah, like a blimp is like a balloon, like a big balloon, and a Zeppelin has like the whatever the like metal inside.
There were 119 Zeppelins built. I mean, there wasn't a lot of either, basically.
Yeah,
And if any
I mean they're so
exist,
big. Like where do you put them? Yeah.
yeah, the whole parking thing is really wild. How you're supposed to just like tie it up to, I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. I would definitely I would love to ride in the Goodyear blimp. I don't think I do a Zeppelin. I do the Goodyear blimp.
That's fair. I'd like to do like I think it'd be cool to like sleep in a Zeppelin. Do like a one night in one. I don't know if it's possible, but it
But
sounds pretty cool.
there's something about like vast open spaces that just scares the hell out of me.
No, I feel like it
Knowing
would
that
be
you're inside that giant what is it, 800 feet?
yeah,
It's so scary to
so
me.
scary. So
Yeah.
scary. I don't know, but I feel like it's safe. I feel like now it feels like it would be safer because they have like computers and also I would want a parachute. Like I know how you
Yeah.
do that, but I'd like
Wait,
ride around.
wait, so there's actually a page on the Goodyear website on how to get on the blimp.
Ooh, can you like sign up?
Oh, they're my invitation only.
All right, let's get on that list.
Okay, we're gonna have to call our agent and tell him to hook us
Yeah,
up.
that's what we want. That's our next step.
Figure
I
it out,
definitely don't
Larry.
want to be a blimp named doomed to fail. I
Ugh,
want to be a blimp that's like very successful.
yeah.
We're doing great. So yeah, that's it. They don't really know what happened. Zeppelin's kind of one way, they're kind of like a cool nostalgia thing to think about, like that we thought it was going to be the thing and planes ended up being the thing. I think a red flag for this and for a lot of like transatlantic travel, like the Titanic, is like, you want to go to Europe and you want to come to the US and you want to connect it, you want it to be fast and luxurious and like super fun. So one more thing that I wanted to mention real quick is another thing that they tried to do that ended up failing to go back and forth from Europe and the US was the Concorde.
Oh yeah,
Remember the Concorde? So
yeah.
just a couple bullets on the Concorde. It was a supersonic jet that flew from the US to mostly to NYC to London, also flew to Paris and Singapore. The first flight was in 1976. The fastest flight was on February 7th, 1996. The Concorde flew from New York to London in 2 hours and 52 minutes at the speed of Mach 2.
That's
Like
so crazy.
right now, it takes 7 hours to get to for that flight.
Yeah, I've read a lot about the Concorde about how like given how fast it flies and how superheated the air outside gets, the thing like is elastic, like it expands and
Yeah,
contracts like dramatically.
it
It's
has a
kind of
sonic
wild.
boom. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And
they don't go sonic until they hit the Atlantic, I don't think.
right, because loud.
Yeah, it would just shatter everybody's windows.
Yeah, yeah. So they it's also very loud. Like I know someone who took it and she said it was very loud because they were going like supersonic through the air. It was also very luxurious, very expensive. It could hold 100 people, only like 100 people at a time, passengers. And so because it's so fast, very similar to the Hindenburg disaster, there was one big disaster on July 25th, 2000. A Concorde crashed shortly after taking off from Charles de Gaulle Airport. What happened was a strip of metal on the runway caused a tire to burst, leading to rupture the fuel tank. The fuel ignited, massive fire, loss of control. The aircraft crashed into a hotel, resulting in the deaths of all 109 people on board and 4 people on the ground.
Remember this?
The flights were halted. There was a test flight a few days later that had engine failure. It returned safely, but that was the end for the Concorde as well. In 2003, it was grounded for good. They were, super expensive and hard to maintain. They had more fuel than other planes, and, you know, not a lot of people could afford to even take it. So they were like, it's kind of outpriced a lot of people. So just like the Hindenburg, one big thing kind of turned the tide on that form of travel. I wanted to just say that those are some ways that terrible things can happen when you're going across the ocean. But I wanted to tell you that on your way home to enjoy your slow leisurely flight, but also considering how long humanity has been around and that it took Columbus 10 weeks to get to America in the first place, it's pretty good. We're doing pretty good.
I
Be safe.
actually thought the flight here, I mean, it was about 8 hours and
Hmm.
easy, easy breezy.
Yeah,
Like
no big
I
deal.
hate flying, but I thought it was surprisingly easy to just like zone out. I mean, they take care of you, right? Like you get fed and constantly and watered and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's not
no
too bad.
Concord needed.
It's not too bad. No Concorde needed. Exactly. Cool. So that's it. I'll share some videos. It's crazy. It's a crazy crash. Real scary.
Yeah,
You can see
yeah,
why it's so famous in history and also um a lot more Nazis than I realized.
yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't realize there were any, so that was a surprise.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I knew there were Germans, but like I forgot that the Germans were Nazis during 1937.
There's 4 Goodyear
So
blimps.
Yeah, 4 Goodyear blimps.
Yeah, they even have one in Europe.
Oh, good for them.
Shame they don't let people ride on it. Awesome, Taylor. That was cool. Sorry, I'm gonna lean back
Cool.
up.
Please do.
But yeah,
I have some corrections from last week's episode, if you
okay.
have a second.
Yeah,
So my
please.
father-in-law is the doctor, and he listens, and he's the best. So he texted me to tell me that I was wrong about chemotherapy. It's not radiation. There's actually two different things. There's radiation therapy that's more general, where they like put you in front of the machine and like radiation like goes into your body. And chemotherapy is can be more like deliberate and more exact on exactly where it's going. So it's like not radiation, it's like different kinds of drugs that are meant to stop the cancer from growing. So they both have the same goal, which is to kill and change the cancer cells so that they don't grow anymore. Right now, there's actually some things that people are working on biological agents, which are called biologics, and they're usually antibodies that treat autoimmune conditions and cancer. So that's sort of like the next step in cancer research and cancer care. And so that is, hopefully coming soon, hopefully going to do something really great. This is a terrible, I'm so sorry, Victor. And then, so yeah, radiation might happen before chemo, but chemo itself is not radiation.
Got it. Got it. Okay. That was a good
Great.
correction. Yeah, I saw you posted that. You posted that on our Facebook page, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. You're the best. Cool.
Sweet. Well, thank you, Taylor. I'll go ahead and kill the recording again. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. I'll kill this
Yes.
recording, and this travel will have no impact on our release schedule.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Sweet.